Good morning. So I'm really excited to be here, and I don't quite know how I'm going to top dancing robots or Jesse, but I'm quite honored to be here with them. So I have a challenge for you guys. I think it's already a challenge that you've accepted and are working on. And that's all of you in this room are defining the future. You have defined the future. And you're still doing more. So my challenge as you go through the weekend, as you go to different talks, as you Twitter or post on Adenica, that you think about how you're putting the user in control of the web. Not the user here in the room, not those of us that are technically savvy, but the average user, because it's our job to make sure that they get to stay in control of their experience, that we all get to stay in control of our experience. Just to kind of highlight what I'm talking about, this is a graph taken from a collusion add-on in Firefox, so you can go install it on Firefox right now. This was the middle of somebody's day. The gray spots are the websites they visited. The red dots are sites that are known for collecting profile information about you. And the lines are the connections in between those sites, what those sites are sharing about you. This was the graph at the end of the day. So as you're browsing the web, this is the profile they're collecting about you. And maybe that's okay, but it's not okay that most of us go through the day and we don't know this is happening. So it's our job as we create the tools that people use, as we create the websites that they use, that we make them aware of this, that we create a future that has really cool dancing robots, and not a future where a bunch of information is collected about us and used in ways that we don't know. So that's my challenge. It's just this weekend, think about it. Have a conversation, tweet me, talk to the person next to you, and think about how we're keeping users in control and the web open and accessible to everybody. I think you guys should all pat yourselves on the back. I mean, this is totally awesome to be here with 2,000 people. It's a bit intimidating just to be in the room with so many awesome people that have done such great things. Python's being used. How many times have I said dancing robots now? Like 5 times? It's being used by very famous organizations that are accomplishing, groundbreaking stuff. It's being used, groundbreaking or not, on sites where people spend a lot of time. I personally don't know what I would do without Google search. Every time my kids ask me a question, I say, well, let's just look it up. And they don't know what an encyclopedia is, unfortunately. They know what Wikipedia is, though. So I was going to talk about 3 things this morning. I want to talk about how we can create these responsible websites and tools for people. I wanted to talk about growing community. As many of you know, I'm really worried about how we grow open source communities in ways that are inclusive to everybody. Then I want to talk about making tools that are responsible. Just kind of a quick show of hands, how many people here actually work on the Python programming language itself? Awesome. And then how many people here use Python? Hopefully it's everybody. All right. Yeah, and actually, even if you don't, you probably do, and you just don't know it. And then third is making those responsible websites. So first, growing community. I wanted to talk a little bit about how communities grow. You guys have grown tremendously, as Jesse pointed out, in ways that we can make sure that we grow in ways that continue to include the new people as much as the people that have been around for a while. When I did a Google search on growing Python communities, I discovered that there's 2,000 Pythons in Florida in the Everglades. And they think that one's a problem, though. So I kept looking. There must be a different Python community out there that's not snakes. So this is from Catherine Devlin's blog. This was what the website looked like in 2004. That was the number of sponsors. And this year, if you go down to the exhibit hall, there's 136 sponsors. So not only has your community grown in size of number of people, but we've grown in number of companies that are involved. And if you've seen my talk, would you do it again for free? That also worries me, because as companies become involved and they start investing money in the community, it's really awesome, because a lot of us get jobs that pay us to do what we love. But it's also something to worry about, how those companies are changing the way our communities grow. And it turns out it's usually a good thing. So 2,000 people here. I was curious, how many people here have been to at least one other PyCon? Oh, wow, awesome. And how many people have been to 3 PyCons or more? And how many people have been to 4 or more? And how many people have actually been to all 10? Like, this is your 10th PyCon. You should stand up. Round of applause. But so now talking about growing communities, how many people here are at your first PyCon? This is your very first one. Wow, stand up, stand up. So I have, wait, stand up for just a second more. I have a challenge for everybody that is still sitting down. I said I was only gonna do one challenge, but I'm giving you one homework assignment. Look around and see one of those people that's standing up. So look at them, remember who they are. So okay, you guys can sit down now. So for those of you that didn't stand up, those of you that are sitting down, it's really hard to go up to people that you think are famous or part of the community and introduce yourself. So go find somebody that's new and introduce yourself to them and tell them what you work on and ask them why they're here and what they work on. So that's my challenge to everybody that has been to more than one PyCon is go find one of those new people. Because it's really hard to be the person, you don't know if the other person's famous or not even. Like, you don't know how many PyCons they've been to or how long they've been a part of the community. Because I've been told that I'm scary. I was told at a, yeah. It was a MIMO conference to date at a MIMO conference in Berlin, and this guy that I thought was actually pretty famous told me that I was scary. And I didn't, and I actually had to look up at him. So I never felt scary, but to realize that those of us that are active on the mailing list or in the bug tracking systems, who post regularly, who have a blog, that somehow makes us a bit intimidating, because it looks like we're already part of this community. And so people that don't feel quite as much a part of it are intimidated by that. So reach out to them. Oh, that's the slide I was supposed to be showing. Reach out to them. And then I put this slide in because somebody told me, and I went and I read it on the web, so it must be true, it was on the web. They said that when you meet somebody, you have exactly 3 seconds to make an impression. So when you meet them, you have 3 seconds. And guess what they make their impression on? They make their impression based on your hair. So I'm totally screwed. I don't even blow dry it, I don't brush it. I'm like, wow, it's a good thing I meet most people online. And then supposedly the second thing they look at is your shoes, which since I usually wear barefoot shoes, I'm not sure what that means. And I did, so remember that, well, I want to say remember that as, oops, wrong way. As you're meeting these people for the first time, whether you're meeting them on a mailing list, or you're meeting them on a blog post and you're both writing comments, or you're reading them in a bug tracking system, remember that this is their first impression, not only of you, but of this 2,000 people community. So as you respond to them, like say they file a bug that's totally stupid, like it's already been filed 15 times and no one's gonna fix it. When you write won't fix, like remember it's their first interaction, like you're showing them your hair. So write a few more nice sentences to it. And who knows, maybe 2 years from now, they'll fix your favorite bug for you. But they get that one chance at a first impression. And if they get a really abrupt response, that you didn't mean to be rude, but you were just abrupt because you were busy, they might not come back. So be nice in that first impression. But then I wanted to say thanks to the whole Python community on behalf of the open source community, because I think Python is actually really good at making sure there's diversity in the community, and groups like the Python Women, Python Ladies, and like all the sponsorships to this conference. I think you guys are doing an awesome job of trying to be inclusive of diversity and inviting people that might not necessarily participate otherwise. So thank you. So as we look at growing community, I think it's important to realize like why people come. Everyone thinks people getting started in open source to scratch an itch. So they get involved because there's a problem that they have. So how many people got involved with Python or any other open source project because they had an itch to scratch, a problem that nobody had fixed? Awesome. So a good number, about a third or a half. I make up these estimates, and then they get quoted later, and it's just me looking at hands. But a good number of us got involved to scratch an itch. But not all of us. Some people are here because there's interesting problems. Some of you, when the wireless went down so that the robots could dance, you guys were trying to figure out like how to get connected and setting up your own hotspots. Some of us get involved because it's fun to learn. I would actually say probably most people in the room really like to learn. They did a study where they figured out that learning something new is worth a 20% raise. So if you offered somebody a new job, they would turn down, if you offered them a new job or a raise to stay at their old job, you would have to give them a 20% raise before they would stay at the old job as opposed to going to the new job and learning something new. Then people often get started, and probably in Python, the Python community is probably pretty big, to learn new skills. They want to be a programmer. Python has lots of good documentation on how to get started programming, and they get involved. Do I have an echo right here in front? Could I get that turned down a little bit? Thanks. And then supposedly some of us are in open source to become famous. Those people have not stood on a stage looking at 2,000 faces, because I'm not quite sure why you would want to subject yourself to that a lot. But maybe you can be famous online and just put nasty comments or something. And then some people get involved because they get paid to. And I think some of us look down on that, but I actually think so most people don't get involved in open source projects because they get paid. Most of us get a paid job doing what we love later, which is totally awesome. But I think the companies that pay people to get started in open source actually end up introducing a lot more diversity. I'm not sure why, but if you did a poll of groups that don't typically get started in open source projects, like women in programming, a lot of them get started because an employer, they were doing a great job at a company, and the employer paid them to go work on this open source project. So I think introducing people through pay actually introduces diversity. And then some people are involved in open source and the web and programming because they believe that it should be free and available to everybody. We're making a difference in the world. We're bringing it to more people. But no matter why anybody gets started, they stay because of the community. I mean, no matter how interesting Python is, no matter how interesting the things you can make with it, you stay because you like hanging out with people. Like, you're here because of the interesting conversations you're going to have. You're going to go to a party tonight, and you're going to discuss some interesting challenge that perhaps when you're at home, your spouse or your friends roll your eyes at you and say, why are you worried about that? Can we just give it a break? This is the weekend where you get to discuss it. And then as you think about community, David Eves did a survey for the Mozilla community, and I've seen it reflected and said in different ways on other community sites and community experts, is that community is much more likely to stay involved if you can measure their impact and show them and tell them how their impact makes a difference. And any project manager could tell you that you get what you measure. But if you can show that person in the community, hey, by translating that website to French, we got 400 more visitors last month, or 2 new websites went up, or by answering people's questions in Bugzilla when they first posted, even though you didn't know the answer just by recognizing them, our bugs were 50% more active, and those people stuck around and gave us more information about what was happening. So if you can help measure that impact, it will help new community members, and it's always interesting yourself to know what impact what you're doing has. So that was my growing community part. Then I'd talk about the tools that we give people to create open, accessible, responsible websites, and then creating them ourselves. So I believe that the web should be open and accessible to everybody. Mozilla also believes that. That's why I landed at Mozilla. But I think it's really important, especially moving forward. And there's a Mozilla, this isn't an advertisement, Mozilla's a nonprofit, but this is the Boot to Gecko phone that we've been talking about and had a big fuss at Mobile World Congress. And I bring it up because there's a story I want to tell about it. So this phone is completely open, and the idea is that the web is the platform. So anything that works in HTML5 or on the web will work on this phone. And it's really cool, and we were all very excited about it. And then last week, I got an email from Mongolia. So I got an email from this guy in the Peace Corps in Mongolia, and he writes me, his name's John, I'm going to space his last name right now. Anyway, he writes me this email, and he's all excited about this phone because in Mongolia, his students don't have very easy access to books. So they have a library, but when they go to the library, they can't check the books out of the library. They have to leave them in the library. So he and his fellow teachers have been trying to figure out how they can get books to their students. And they've been trying all sorts of things, but the students all have like these cheap, they have phones. They all have mobile phones, no books, but they have phones. And so they have these cheap phones from China that have all different standards on them, and some have viruses. And he's down to like trying to send them like JPEG pictures of the pages of the book, or maybe he can send it like in text messages, but he says, do we tell our students to read text messages 2,138 through 5,650? To get the chapter for the night. And so he was really excited about this phone, that he was going to be able to send them HTML books at some point in the future. And I thought, wow, if this guy in Mongolia, who doesn't have running water in his house, so I don't know where he's checking his emails, but if he can see the vision here, like we're changing the world, like we're going to make a difference in lives of people around the world by keeping the web open and software free. And so I think I bring this point up because I bring this point up because I think all of you in the room and everybody in the free software community has made huge sacrifices over the years. So I remember when Linux first came out on desktops, on laptops, and I would go to conferences and I would very comfortably be using my Windows software to connect with my modem at my hotel room, and it would turn out that the people that were at the conference with me hadn't slept the night before because the modem didn't work with Linux. And so they stayed up all night trying to make this funky hardware work with with free software. And so people made huge sacrifices to make things work on the desktop. And some of them did it because they believed it should be open and free. And some of them did it just because they were just plain tired of seeing the blue screen of death. But they all of us, you guys, made huge sacrifices to make that happen. And sometimes I think that we think we won and that we're not pushing as hard as we used to. So that's my challenge, like keep pushing. Because free isn't open, and not free software isn't open source software, I never said that. But I mean, free is in like those free web services on the web are not open, so free isn't free. So just because you can log in and store all your pictures for free, just because you can get all your email for free, just because you can do online banking for free, doesn't mean that it's open. It doesn't mean that it's done with the ideals of free software. And so that's my challenge for this weekend, is think about those. And how can we be offering web services and programs of the future that offer people freedom? And so I believe the people in this room are the people that make those tools. So we have more chance than anyone to impact them. And so the third thing I said I was going to talk about is the tools themselves. So it's up to us to make these websites that are free and open. And to be honest, I don't think we've really defined what it means to have an open web service, to have a free software type web service. I mean, some people have made some awesome progress towards it, like you could look at programs like Identica versus Twitter, but I think there's still a lot of issues to be decided. So what does it mean if you're hosting my data? Obviously, I want you to host my data, and I want you to host it in a way that respects my privacy, not necessarily a way that's open for everybody to read my email. So what does that mean? And if you're hosting it, what kind of access do you need to give me for me to still be in control of it while you're still providing me a service? I think there's a ton of questions which we haven't answered yet. But just to recall my example at the beginning, people are tracking us. They have my data. I gave them my data, right? I was Twittering before the talk, and my tweets go to Twitter and to Facebook, and those people have my data. And when I signed up, I clicked some kind of box that gave them some kind of rights to it. And I probably, I probably could explain it to you with more knowledge than most people that are using Facebook, but I'm not exactly really sure what kind of rights they have to my data. And a friend of mine got this message from, I believe this one was from an email service provider. For your security, we may temporarily disable access to your account. Like, how freaky would it be to get that message in the morning when you thought you had 300 emails you had to answer? And this wasn't from the same service, but from a different service. We will not be able to reactivate your account for any reason. And when you get that from the place that you put all your information, because they're awesome and they help you search it very easily, that's a really freaky message to get. But before you say, I would never do that, before you say, I would create a web service and I would never do something like that, you may have to. So you may create a web service and you may not be able to authenticate that person anymore. You can't verify that they were the person that originally signed up for that account. So you probably can't give them access to their account. Or maybe there was some legal reason you had to, maybe it's better to delete it than, I don't know. You may have to give messages like that at some point in the future if you have a web service. So my point isn't never to get in that spot, although that would be nice. The point is that you have to give users tools along the way so that they don't feel totally disempowered when they see that message. So how many people here in the room use an email web service? Right, and how many of you have that backed up somewhere else? So a good portion, like half of us. That is way beyond the average population, right? Like if I tell my parents that they need to back up their email, and they kind of look at me and say, which button do I push? And I can't tell them to I can't tell them to download Thunderbird or Evolution and make sure it's running every day, and it's too many steps. So instead, they call, who do they call? They call us. And they get that message, you've all gotten that phone call. It doesn't, how many people have gotten a phone call like that? It's not working. So we need to help change the world so we get fewer phone calls. Because nobody does phone anymore, right? Yeah, the really weird thing is calls that are unsolicited are really strange for me these days. Everyone always texts me or emails me and says, can I call you now? So there are things happening, there's the do not track movement where you can tell websites, please don't track me when you're browsing. I'm using Mozilla examples, but there's more than that. This is the browser ID, which is now called Persona, is like a single sign-on where you get to pick which persona you're logging into which sites with. So if it's widely adopted, then you'll be able to say, this site is my Mozilla persona because I'm logging in for work, and this site is my my dating website, so I log in with that thing, and this website is my Gmail identity, because that's how I talk to all my friends. So you're in control of who you are. But they're not just backing it up and being in control. So there's the being in control of who you are online and being able to keep that private if you want to or need to. There's the being able to back it up and have your data however and whatever you want it. But it's also really important that we give people a way to delete or remove that account. And I think you probably guys know from, I think Facebook was the example, but it's really kind of hard to delete your online identity. I think many teenagers go through this, right? Once it's out there, it's usually out there somewhere, or somebody copied it, or somebody posted it somewhere else, and you're stuck. We don't give people an easy way to say, I'm done, finished. That was mine, and I don't want it out there anymore. We need to rethink how we do these web services. And it's us in the room that need to think about it. And not just web services, but our life in the future, and how it integrates with our mobile phones, how it integrates with our online identity, our computers or our phones or whatever personal devices we continue to have in the future. And we need to think about how these things interact in a way that keeps the user in control and the user responsible. And education will be part of that. So all of us educate, we're educating ourselves, we educate our friends and family, but I think it has to be more than education. There has to be, like, when I sign up for an email web service, there's a big clear button that says, like, you haven't backed up your email to anywhere else. Do you want to do this? And if so, here are your options to back it up. Or when you post to Facebook, it says, that picture is going to live for, 15 years, and it's not really possible to delete it. Are you sure you're sober enough to publish this picture right now? And I know people have worked on that problem. I know there's little apps where Responsibly does a breathalyzer and makes you do a little test before you can post. So a show of hands, how many people in the room have tried to create some web service that offered, some website that offered a service to somebody else? Right. And all of you, like me, were secretly hoping you could charge $40 a month for it, and like 1,000 people would sign up. So those are the three things that I wanted to talk about today. So I wanted to talk about growing community responsibly, which I think mainly means realizing when people's first entry point to your community is, and making sure that first experience is awesome. So it doesn't mean like you have to find one of the first people and become buddies with them and have 5 beers with them this weekend, although I'm sure some of you will have 5 beers with them this weekend. But it does mean that, like, when they first see you, when they first see your hair, that you're just a little nice to them. And second, that as you create tools, as we create the tools of the future, the things that people are going to use to create other things, that we create them in ways that enable them to give users control. And then the third, as you create those new tools of the future, you make sure that they're nice, friendly robots and doing good things. So that's what I wanted to cover today. I don't know if this is set up for like a good format for question and answer, but I encourage you to take this conversation throughout the weekend with each other. You can reach out to me here or on Twitter, reach out to each other. But to have the conversation to figure out how we can make sure that the world of the future is one where users have control and a safe place to live.